back to another episode on the YouTube channel CI/CD on AWS. In today's video, I'm planning to cover a new blueprint of CodeCatalyst that I've personally not used before. So it's going to be really fun to see how this works and see if we are able to quickly bring up some stuff through this blueprint. So we are back in CodeCatalyst over here, and we are going to create a new project. Here, as we already looked at, we have possibility to use different blueprints. Today I've decided that I want to be able to build a static website because a lot of my friends have been talking about this. So I'm going to try to bring up a static website based on this blueprint that we have over here. As you can see, I can choose between Amplify hosting and then the CloudFront S3 option, as I really like to have control about the infrastructure that is underlying, and I do not trust things like Amplify yet. I'm going to use the CloudFront and S3 option. The blueprint gives me a lot of details on how to do that. And then gives me some information on what will actually happen after I use this blueprint. So without further ado, let's just move on and see what happens if I create this project. And I'm going to name this project to be a Hugo test project. As we've seen in the page before, we are able to select either Hugo or Jekyll. Hugo is, as you can see, the static site generator that is written in Go, and Jekyll on the other side is similar but written in Ruby. As I'm more the Go person, I'm going to choose to go with Hugo in this case. Then I will need to select an account. I will also need to select a role that is going to be used for deployment. In the advanced piece, I can now select the region, and as I'm usually in close to Frankfurt, I'm going to go with Frankfurt. Then I have, as I already mentioned, I'm going to use Hugo. Going to use CloudFront for deployment. CDK stack name, I'm going to call this Hugo test stack, and the repository is static website content. I think I like that. Let's go ahead. Create project. And now we're going to see what has been created as part of this blueprint. We will see the repository. We will see, hopefully, some content in that repository. As I said, right, I've not used this blueprint before, though this is the first time for me as well. So I can see a CodeCatalyst directory which contains the workflows. I can also see some content structure over here, and I can see that there has been a cool description around this blueprint as well. So if you want to do your first post, this is what you at the end will need to do, right? And we can try that out as well. Okay, so let's see what happens. Okay, so this is the content at the end. I think we're going to need to read a little bit more about that. Before we do so, let's have a look on the workflows pieces. To see what workflows have been provisioned. You can see that over here already there has been a run started for this workflow. So here we can see that there is a CDK bootstrap, there is a build piece, and there is a deploy piece that is going to be executed. The bootstrap in this case actually is required, but usually it should not be part of the workflow. This is a step where CDK initializes the backend services. So we're gonna need to wait until this completed, and then we will see a deployment step over here. While we're waiting, let's have a look on how this actually looks like, right? So here we can see the workflow source, where we are pre-installing Hugo and other things. Then we can see the bootstrap action, and then we'll see the CDK deploy action, which is actually going to execute the deployment in CDK. And I would assume that as part of this build process, right? So let's just look into that. we are also going to be creating the static websites, which are then going to be updated. As you can see, there's 7 pages already available and only 1 static file. Cool. So while we're waiting for the workflow to finish, let's quickly go back to the source repository and let's see what descriptions we have over here in the README. And briefly jumped over that, right? So here the idea is to edit this online directly in a dev environment, which is something that we can do. Then we could directly, hopefully, update this, right? So let's try. Let's go ahead. Let's create a dev environment where we can actually then work on a branch. We can avoid that for now, and let's see if that if that works, right? So I'm going to create a Cloud9 instance. I can choose a repository. I want to work in a new branch, showcase, and I don't need I can give it an alias. That's cool. Let's create it. So given I'm on the free tier, I'm choosing the smallest option for Cloud9, and that is going to happen now in the background. So we can see in the workflow, while we're waiting for Cloud9 to come up, that we are now over here in the CDK deploy action. That CDK deploy action will trigger the deployment of our stack. As you can see on the right under this output, the objects that will be included are written down here. The deploy action is automatically started with the command, where is it? To deploy without to deploy without asking, right? So we will see that there is going to be a bucket that is being deployed, a CloudFront instance that is going to be deployed, and a Lambda function. So yeah, this is now already being worked on. A role has been created, and now the CloudFront is being created. As you can see, CloudFront already seems to be there. So yeah, we should be seeing this to come back soon. Let's see what Cloud9 is now doing. So here we can see the fully featured Cloud9 instance already being set up. And if I recall correctly, the description of the blueprint was you should be able to directly get this going, right? So let's go back to the README. As I said, I did not look at this yet myself, and I've not worked with Hugo yet, right? So I need to go over here. So I need to go to the folder, and then I can create a new thing. So let's see, in the terminal or down here, I can see that I am not in that folder. So let's go to this one, and then let's create a new post. We're going to do that with just the command that we got here from the README. Let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna be typing it then. Hugo new posts, showcase Hugo workflow .md. MD means markdown in this case, right? So let's see what we have now. So over here, Hugo has now hopefully created in the posts folder a showcase Hugo workflow. We are going to open this file now. We can see that the title has been set, the draft that's been set to draft. I'm going to set this to false, and then I'm just going to copy paste this over here. This is going to be in CI/CD on AWS showcase, and then I'm going to save this. And as the README says, let's add this, right? So that's kind of all we need to do. So let's do a git. Oops, sorry, that was wrong. Let's do a git add dot. This will now show us that we have 2 things that are going to be committed. Git commit -m initial post, git push. And now we will see that this is going to be pushed to a branch. So as you remember, we have been setting up a branch. over here, right? So let's go over and create a pull request for this branch, which will then actually trigger the workflow, right? So we have seen this workflow being executed. In the definition, we can see that the trigger is to push on main. So this means we now need to merge our branch to the main branch to get this moved over. Initial post. So I can open up the pull request with this, like this. Now, before I actually merge it, let's have a look. So this workflow should be completed, or well, not yet. I'm going to give it a minute to see what happens if and we're going to pause the recording until we're done. Then we're going to look at what this workflow created. We're then going to change to merge our pull request and see if we can get our change directly deployed. So I'll be back in 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, so as I promised, I'm back now. The CDK deploy action has completed. We can see our stack that has been created as well. Over here, we can see the resources that have been added. We have the CloudFront distribution, which has a physical ID. We do have the custom resource deployed, and yeah, all kind of other stuff that is required to bring up Hugo at the end. And we have not touched a single piece of infrastructure as code. So now we should also see, hopefully, the link to the website somehow. So I think this is something that we might have missed, that has been missed here, right? I would love to get the application URL of the CloudFront distribution, but that's not a problem. We can get that from here, right? So let's see if we can find this CloudFront distribution. So I've went ahead and I've merged the pull request, as you can see, after the initial deployment has been successful. In CloudFront, we were able to find the newly deployed distribution that has been deployed through the workflow. And we can see that this is an empty website for now, right? So there is no fancy new post that we just added. So as I said, I merged the pull request, and now we can see that the workflow is already running. The build step has already been completed a minute ago, which has the installation of Hugo, and now the CDK deploy action is running. The CDK deploy action should now upload the new post that we just created. So I'm looking forward to see that. So we can see this is executing right now. Let's go back to CloudFormation. Here we have the Hugo test stack, which has been created, and there should be an event which is saying update in progress, right? So the workflow uses CloudFormation to do the deployment, which is based on CDK infrastructure as code here, and this is now being executed. And yeah, gonna take 1 or 2 minutes, and then we hopefully should be able to see our post coming up on that website. So if anyone watching this has experiences with using Amplify, I would be glad to hear if Amplify hosting is faster than CloudFront here. Obviously, you cannot really compare both, right? But they serve a similar purpose here, right? So I really would like to understand if that would be faster from a deployment perspective, right? Because what limits us from bringing up our first post within a few minutes is those CloudFront deployments, which seem to take very long, right? Okay, and while we're waiting for this to complete, I'm already going to stop my dev environment. This is important because if you forget that, you're going to be incurring costs. So over here in the AWS toolkit that I just selected, you have an option to stop the dev environment. You can obviously also directly close the window, but then it's going to take 50 minutes for the environment to shut down. By pressing on this button, right, this is going to be directly stopped and you will not incur any costs. Then I close this window. Then let's look at CloudFormation. Update seems to be still in progress. And now we're done, right? So the update completed. As you can see, it took like 2 minutes, right, to do the deployment of a new post. And let's see if we can now see the new post. So if I go to our CloudFront URL, I will now see that I have a showcase Hugo workflow, right? Then I have my hello from CodeCatalyst in CI/CD on AWS Showcase, and I can see that if I go to the page itself, this is a static page. It has been rendered behind posts. It has a date, that's the date that we set. It has our title that we already also had. And yeah, it was really easy to bring this Hugo site up and running. So thank you so much for having a look. I hope that you enjoyed, and let me know what your experiences are with the different blueprints that AWS has added to CodeCatalyst. I really hope you are going to come back and going to subscribe to the channel, and I'm going to continuously add more content with details and experiences that I have on the one side with CodeCatalyst, but also on the other side with all things on CI/CD, so continuous integration and continuous delivery or deployment on AWS. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, and bye bye.